Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Now it is time to introduce our main speaker for tonight, James.
Hell yeah.
Hi, I'm James. I'm an alcoholic. This is very loud. Thank you, Chris, for a really wonderful talk. Anything that I have to say beyond what Chris had to say is pretty much embellishment. I feel like he pretty much said it all. Get this out of the way, newcomers. You are not the most important person in the room. You are, however, of equal importance. And that, to me, is one of the most significant beauties of Alcoholics Anonymous, is that we all need each other equally. You know, the person with a lot of years, maybe crippled with cancer and needs a ride, and it's the guy with 9 months that's giving him a ride. I've seen this many, many times. And I also like to refer to newcomers as recent arrivals. I mean, you know, you're not the most important person in the room, and you're not just like this piece of crap either. So recent arrivals, welcome. And I do know that in our book it says that we must burn into the consciousness of every man that he can get well regardless of anyone. And that's what I'm trying to do right off the bat here with the recent arrivals, because, you know, if you're anything like I was, you were pretty much not paying attention past the first few minutes. So you can get well regardless of anyone. That's including me, it's including your sponsor, and it's including yourself. I'm really overwhelmed by how generous everybody has been to me in the 15 or 20 minutes that I've been here. I've been thanked for coming here maybe 25 times before anybody heard a word I have to say. That was not the way it was prior to my getting sober. And thank you for laughing. It kind of loosens it up a little bit. This is a big room, and with a lot of people, and the weight of the message is amplified. I mean, it's really important. Thankfully, you know, I'm not the most important person in the room. It's just my turn in the barrel tonight, or my turn in the tree. Never mind. It's my turn tonight in the hot seat. You know, there was a very famous speaker, and he went to some meeting, and he was a circuit speaker, and I don't name names. You know, he was at this meeting, and there was some poop butt drunk in the front row. A guy had a couple of days, and he gave his pitch, and then he came back a year later, And the guy that was that poop butt drunk in the front row had a year of sobriety. And so this famous speaker thought to himself, I must have given a hell of a talk. Here's this guy that, he could barely, sit in his chair a year ago, and now he's got a year of sobriety, and he's all spanking clean, and he's taking a cake. So the guy got up at the podium, and he said, I was at this meeting a year ago, and I don't remember anything. I don't remember anything the speaker said. I don't remember any of the people, but I do remember that there was a lady who lit my cigarette for me because my hands were shaking so badly I couldn't light it. And that kept me coming back. And that famous speaker had a lesson in humility that night. I don't know who it's going to be that I touch. Each one of us doesn't know who it's going to be that we touch with a kind act, a sober act, a generous act, that just might make it okay for them to stick around long enough to get the kinks out of their life, maybe sober up and become, members of society. There's a lot of things that I don't do. Good night. I don't have a canned pitch. I'm not going to tell you the same story every single time. I try to be very, very current and very naked with what I'm feeling, what I'm going through. It ain't that pretty. And so my talks vary quite considerably. I do bathe before I come up to the podium. I respect it by being here and by hopefully demonstrating the love that I have for Alcoholics Anonymous, which I hope, if you are a recent arrival and you have decided that you're an alcoholic, that you might develop that love as well. And I found that it develops person by person by person. I don't order people around. I don't tell people what to do. My sponsor from a number of years ago told me, when I asked him if he would consider possibly maybe, or would you think about maybe on an interim temporary basis, maybe think about be my sponsor? And he said, I don't have to think about it, sure. And I was his first sponsee. He was a pretty passionate guy. And so we met at a coffee shop. This is in New York, and he laid out the conditions for me being his sponsee. And he said, I have two conditions for you being my sponsee, for me sponsoring you. Because there's no handbook on this. And he said, A, you attend meetings, B, that you're honest with me. That was it. It never, ever changed. And he was my sponsor for a very long time. If you are a recent arrival or you have questions or anything, there's a lot of answers to be found in these pamphlets. One of them is questions and answers on sponsorship. That's a great pamphlet. It'll help you find the person you're looking for. And it may help you get away from the person you aren't looking for. We're a wide and varied bunch, and we are people who ordinarily do not mix. We're not all going to be the same fit. But in this moment, we are. I'm grateful to my friend Dave for coming out to see me. I'm grateful to my friend Rustam for being here. I'm grateful to all these guys that came up and said hi that I've known for a long, long time. People that I run into in my neighborhood. Hey, you're going to be okay. You're going to be all right. we're not getting anything out of this other than to be here for one another. And that was my dream with drinking. And it didn't work out that way, other than it got me here. I drank a lot like Chris's dad. When you described your dad coming home and having a highball, and man, I did that when I was 13. A lot of us seem to get very alcoholic at the age of 13. I don't know if it's hormones, but you know, we're changing and trying to fit into a very scary and big world. A lot's expected of us. You know, we're growing up, and you know, I don't want to let go of my teddy bear. And boy, one of the express tickets to being a grown-up is you know, smoking cigarettes and taking drugs and drinking alcohol. When I was a little kid, I have memories of being even back as young as 5, 6 years old, when my mom was baking a Christmas cake. We had these big Christmas celebrations, and my father was Jewish. And she would put take a teaspoon of this stuff and put it in. It was this amber-colored liquid. And I'm watching everything. I'm watching the raisins go in. I'm watching the flour go in. I'm watching the sugar go in. And then this amber liquid. You know, what's that? And it was vanilla extract. Let me smell it. Let me smell it. I smell it. Let me taste it. Let me taste it. I got a taste of it. And for those of you that know, vanilla extract is 35% alcohol by volume, which means that it's 70 proof. When that hit my tongue, my little 5-year-old body, it was, wow. And it tasted all vanilla-y, and it had some kind of effect on me. And I would steal a capful. And when I stole a capful and I'm this big, you know, knocking that back is like taking a shot of booze. And what that turned into was no more. You know, basically trying to pull the bottle out of my hands. And now I know where it is. It's in the cabinet there in the pantry. So it goes from stealing vanilla extract, taking little nips off of the vanilla extract, to realizing that the bottle's getting low, and I don't want to get caught, so I start stealing the orange extract. And then, you know, oh no, it was almond extract, and then after that became the orange extract, which was like really hitting bottom, you know, because that stuff really tasted bad. You know, so here's like sneak drinking, because I like the effects produced by alcohol. You know, they're 5 or 6 years old. Now that may not sound very significant. You know, if you are in here tonight and we're drinking a couple of fifths, you know, at the end. But I'm not talking about the end. I'm talking about the beginning. Little tiny kid stealing booze, and I love booze. And you know, you fast forward to we had this big old Christmas party, baking the same cakes and all that, and brandied eggnog and rum punch and ale that I stole from the refrigerator, and getting so drunk and vomiting up everything. It was coming out my ears. Then lying in bed and it's spinning around, and I'm 12 years old, and I declared, I will never do this again. And I meant it. I will never do this again. And I did not get sober at 12. So anyway, it was, you know, kind of getting along with the big fellas, you know, stealing some cigarettes, stealing some booze, you know, beers here and there, until I turned 13, and I had been sent away to school. I came from a pretty big family, and they sent me to a private school. They took me out of the family, out of the public schools, and sent me to a a private school, which was a gesture of love on their part, but I only took it as a gesture of rejection. And they wanted the best for me, and I wasn't doing too well in school, and I was starting to become disruptive. Very disruptive. I mean, I had been for a long time. I liked fires, and I don't think they were punishing me for stealing vanilla extract, but I took it as a punishment. But they felt that I was a pretty smart kid, and I wasn't doing well in school, and if I went to a really strict place, jacket and tie kind of place, stand up when the teachers come in and say, "Sir," that this was somehow going to straighten me out. And it had the opposite effect, because I am more of an opposite thinker. And I guess in the book they say that alcoholics are defiant by nature. I don't know if this was defiance, but I was always going in the opposite direction of everyone else, and I think it's primarily because I was left-handed. And back then, in the late 50s, early 60s, being left-handed was it was not as well understood. I mean, simply put, in Italian, this is sinistra and this is destra. Sinister. The left hand is sinister, and the right hand is destra, right. So it's not that, it's the hand that is right. The left hand is the hand that is wrong. And if you do things with the left hand, you're somehow impacted by the devil. Anyway, I didn't know this at 13, but the nuns used to beat the shit out of you so that you would write with your right hands. A friend of mine, Frankie, I said, "Geez, Frankie, you have beautiful handwriting." He says, "Yeah, thank the nuns that beat the shit out of me." Oh, we're in a church. Anyway, going in the opposite direction, I went to the school, and it just really had an opposite effect. It didn't settle me down or anything like that. It freaked me out. And I became very unhappy. I felt like I'd been kicked out of my home. My brothers and sisters didn't have to go. And I had to, it was not a lot of fun. It was a good place to go. I mean, if that's your thing. But it wasn't. And I really freaked out. And they wouldn't relent. They wouldn't let me come back home. And I started acting out, and a lot of tears, a lot of screaming, a lot of destruction, and I could actually do the work, but I was pretty miserable. So what they did was they allowed me to become a day boy. And what that meant was that I could go to school in the daytime and then come home and sleep at home. I mean, I failed to mention this boarding school was maybe 2 miles from where I lived. So that added insult to injury. Had it been explained to me, maybe I would have taken it a little better. I don't know. In any event, I became this day boy. Now, there are levels of misery in these boarding schools. The 7-day boarders are kids that have been put there by their very wealthy parents typically, and they go off to South America, the Virgin Islands, do whatever they do, and they leave their kids there almost year-round. And then there's the 5-day boarders, the ones that live closer in the area, and they get to go home on the weekends. And they're below the 7-day boarders, because the 7-day boarders are like, I guess it's like jail. They're the murderers, the 5-day boarders are the robbers, and the day boys, which I later became, are like the rapos and the child molesters. in this structured environment. Because they hate it so much that you get to go home. I did not realize this at the time. Anyway, I get to go home after another wonderful day at school, and the house is empty. My brothers and sisters are all yet to come home because I got to come home earlier because I went earlier. And I had just fucking had it. You know, pardon my use of foul language, but I had just fucking had it. And I dragged myself into the house, and I look in the kitchen, and there, you know, arrayed on the counter, something I'd seen 100 times, 1,000 times, were these bottles of booze. There was vermouth, there was Canadian Club, there was some wine, there was some vodka, some other kind of whiskey, maybe some cooking wine. And I took a glass out of the cabinet, and I poured an inch from each bottle into that glass. So I wouldn't get caught, so it wouldn't be missed. You know, I wasn't drinking for taste. And I made myself a highball. And I took it and I chug-a-lugged it down, put the glass in the sink, walked into the den, and you know, I pulled on the old TV set, and I sat on the couch, and I jerked my little tie like I was like a stressed out 13-year-old Wall Street executive. You know, and whatever came on the television, you know, because the television had to warm up back in those days, and it kind of as the television warmed up, the booze started to hit me, and it started to hit me, and it started to flood over this area in my chest, and I could feel it, and I became aware of having this knot in my chest. That it was I just wanted to fucking scream. I wanted to lash out, I wanted to scream, I wanted to just hit something. And I did a lot of that. Destruction, self-destruction, really acting out. And, or doing crazy stuff. I don't like the word acting out. That booze hit that knot in my chest, and it just started to loosen. And it felt like it was melting it, and that knot in my chest just started to open up, and it became this sunflower in the middle of my chest, and it just started to spread out into my limbs, and it went into my arms, and it went into my legs, and I sunk down further into the couch. And like Chris's pop, I just breathe. It was great. And that for me became an emotional, hardcore, locked-in memory of what alcohol could do for me in times of emergency, stress. And I just loved it. And I spent many, many years combating stress with booze. And drugs, loads and loads of drugs. I don't hesitate to discuss drugs because drugs are discussed in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous in the first 164 pages. It talks about how the alcoholic will begin to show up at sanitariums, that will start tapering off with morphine and sedatives, heroin and goofballs. You know, I spent 20 years tapering off. I smoked marijuana every day for 16 years, and I can attest to its medical benefits. 16 years on it, and when I stopped, I felt better. That was good, wasn't it? So here I am, you know, and it all spreads out, and you know, I start to relax, and yet it didn't. I wasn't a poop butt drunk in the gutter the next day. I managed to struggle through life. I had a very healthy respect for alcohol because for me, drinking alcohol was like putting a match to gasoline. I didn't mention my friend Rustum, you know, who's the coolest, funniest guy in the world. He's sober a long time too. And always has a smile for me. You know, it was like putting a lit match to gasoline. I mean, it's like I would drink and then I would guzzle it. I very rarely was able to sip it or, you know, take it easy. You know, I would find myself almost immediately insanely drunk. You know, involved in some kind of sexual compromise, criminal compromise, personal compromise, just something, you know, and like, wow, how did I get here? That's the way it hit me. I was not someone that could savor a fine wine with dinner and have dessert with a, you know, blah 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 and all that crap. It just wasn't that way for me. This healthy respect or fear that I had of alcohol seemed, you know, I could get high on weed. I seemed to be able to cope with that a little better. And then I eventually started to work in you know, because I did have at least that was instilled in me at some level that if I worked, I somehow felt reward from it. I felt good about working. And that didn't really matter if it was painting a house or mowing the lawn or taking out the garbage. If I completed a task, I always felt better. And I made a decision after, you know, being in a, you know, variety of manual labor jobs that I really actually quite liked. They helped me. I made a decision to go after and become what I do today, and I was fortunate. And started to make some money. And that combination of being making money and being fortunate sometimes can be lethal. So all of a sudden I got all this money and I can buy all the booze I want and all the drugs I want, and I did just that. How am I doing on time? I have a half an hour left, right? I have 9 minutes. Excellent. I didn't die. Yeah, okay, so now we got to talk fast. So I got very fortunate. I did all the drugs that I wanted, and then I started, it started bleeding into my craft, and I started getting fired. I got fired from 3 jobs that, you know, I would have given my left arm for. Because when it came time for me to go to work, and they're like, "Come on, James, we're ready for you," I was like, "Get away!" You know, and you know, I'm busy preparing. And here I am telling these people to leave me the fuck alone when they were paying me to be there, and they just, you know, and I couldn't understand. I was bewildered. They said, "You're done." And that just brutalized my spirit, because it was kind of like being a cop. You know, doing what I do, you know, it's like, you know, the job is almost more important than anything. Getting the job, you know, if you're a cop, it's the badge. You know, if you're in the service, you know, it's like the Corps. And, you know, here I am, and it's like I was blowing off these jobs that I'd fought really hard to get. And it wasn't me, my conscience, it was the disease. It was the disease driving me to disregard the thing that I loved and hurt myself. You know, one of my sponsors said that, you know, we have to become convinced that as an alcoholic, there's only one real guarantee that I have, regardless of whatever you do. And that is that no matter what my situation is, no matter what my condition is, no matter what's going on in my life, there is no thing that a drink won't make worse. And never better. And it's progressive, and it's inevitable, and it just... Anyway, I ended up in jails, I ended up in institutions, and I thankfully didn't die. And I had a wife that loved me, and had she not worked, with all this money I had been making, I was in debt to the government. I had nothing. I had scars on my arms, and a perforated septum, and I drank like a pig, and my teeth were all busted and chipped up, and I was all out of shape, you know, and my physical shape meant a lot to me. I was really like into my physique, and I was all fat and not well. Well, because it just, to me, it meant a lot, you know. It's just that, you know, we all have our own thing. And anyway, had she not had a job, I had a rent-controlled apartment, and I would have been on the street. So, you know, rehabs, going away to all these places, you know, I went to the expensive rehab, then I went to the less expensive one, then I went, you know, to the Caribbean, and then I went to the less expensive part of the Caribbean, and everything was gone. And finally I got sober in these poop-butt meetings on the Bowery in New York. One of them was called Living Now, in the folding metal chairs, you know, and it's just coming out of me like this, and I'm sitting there with my head in my hands, you know, shaking. And that's where I got sober. I was surrounded by liquor stores. I was surrounded by drug dealers. And, you know, I had to get sober right in the eye of the storm, because wherever I went, there I was. I have 5 minutes. Okay, so I sobered up in these meetings, and I met some of the most amazing people of my life. One of the things that I did to disguise my disease from myself was I made up a story. I'm 57 years old, and in 1971, I got my draft card for the Vietnam War. I was never called. The Vietnam War was over. And then later on, I developed this heroin habit. And so I created this fiction of being a wounded Vietnam veteran. You know? Yeah, man, I'd like, you know, hey, you don't know, man, because you weren't there, man. I created this fiction of being a veteran, that I could somehow justify this heroin addiction that I knew was absolutely against myself. And so for a couple of years I went on like this, and then it's like when I got sober at Living Now, my sponsor was speaking, and he had 2 years, and he was really very, very passionate. And he talked about being in Vietnam. He had been a Marine, and you know, and he talked about being a firefighter. And I fell in love with the guy. I absolutely fell in love with him. I just fell in love with him. He became my friend, and he's the guy that I asked to sponsor me. And you know, I told one of my friends, I'm going to ask Pat to sponsor me. She said, "Why, he's so angry." I said, "No, he's passionate." And you know, we understood each other on a very, very deep, intimate level that is hard to manufacture. It just has to take place. And I had to tell somebody, you know, about the truth, because this was the burden that I came in here, the lie that was keeping me out. If you keep going in and out, tell somebody about that nasty sexual secret. Tell somebody about the lie that you've been carrying around. That's the thing that will kill you. And so, you know, I went to Pat and I said to him, "Pat, you know, I got to tell you something." He's like, "Yeah, what is it?" And I said, "Pat, I've been lying to people about being a veteran of Vietnam. I was never in Vietnam. The closest I ever been to Vietnam was a Vietnamese restaurant." And he said, "That's okay, man. I lied about it myself." And I said, "Huh? How could you lie about it? You were there. You were a Marine. You're decorated." And he says, Yeah. But what I have going on, Jamie, is that I have these real intimacy issues. I have a hard time asking for any kind of physical affection, like a reassuring hug from someone. And you know, sex is a different matter. He said, and what I would do is I would pick girls up at the bars and stuff, and we'd have sex, and I'd wait for them to fall asleep, you know, and I'd wait for them, and when they were asleep, you know, he said, I would wake up, and I'd say, and the girl would wake up, what is it? And he'd say, "The nom." And the girl would say, "Oh, it's okay. And he'd be all. And he said to me, and that's how I got the hug that I needed. And he told me, and he said to me, "Jamie, I know guys that are tortured by flashbacks, and they're never going away." He was very definite about that. "I know guys who are tortured by flashbacks, and they're never going away. I don't suffer from them. And so sometimes I think what I did is worse than what you did. So don't worry about it. He clapped me on the shoulder. And in that instant, I went from feeling this big to being right size. I instinctively made the amends. I was rigorously honest. And in sharing it with someone else, I experienced the mercy of Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't take people through the steps. We take ourselves through the steps. I'll keep you company on your journey. My sponsee roster is full right now, in case you've heard anything exciting. But my friend Pat was the kind of man, and it doesn't matter how many years you got. I got 23 years. I've been sober since 1987, which is nice. You know, it's significant to me personally, and it provides you with an example that it can be done. My sponsor, Pat, had 16 years of sobriety when he was in the North Tower of the World Trade Center as a captain of Ladder Company 3 in the New York City Fire Department. And he was on the 38th floor. And the radio transcript said, you know, Captain Brown, come down. You know, the buildings are going to go. And he said, can't come down, can't comply, we have wounded civilians. And that's the kind of guy he was. And that building came down and it killed him, and my heart just got torn out of my chest. It just killed me right along with him. And I loved that man. Buried him, did all that stuff, and he had 16 years and he was 48. I have 23 and I'm 57 now. He was fully realized. You know, I don't know when I'm going to die. You don't know when you're going to die. So if somebody's got 10 or 12 or 15, that is not an automatic, you know, it's just not. I'm just about done here. Like, am I done? 5 minutes? 1 minute. See, when I get to loving this stuff, I'm not so sweating it. Anyway, that's the quality of person that I've met in Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, that's a big deal. They say there are no big deals. That's a big deal. And he was the brother of my heart. The steps. Everybody talks about them. Blah, 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 blah. The steps are included in the fellowship. The fellowship and the program are indivisible. If you're new, if you're a recent arrival, get somebody who's got 4 days more than you and just hit meetings together for a year. We talk about practicing the principles in all our affairs. And so I like to share something that I've come up with over the past few years. What are the principles? What are the guiding principles behind these steps? Because the steps can be very confusing. I used to just stand in front of the banners and read them. So I'm going to share with you what the principles behind the steps are for me and how I attempt to conduct my life on a daily basis. And I fall way short of the mark. But the first step is hyphenated, and it says, you know, and so it's two-part in principle. So the principle behind it is honest surrender. Honesty and surrender. I have to be honest, you know, accept something, and if it's too much for me, I got to surrender. The second step, the principle behind that is faith. The third step, the principle behind that is decisiveness. You make a decision. Am I going to go left? Am I going to go right? You make a decision. And when you make a decision, you'll find that the going is a lot easier. The fourth step, the principle behind that is self-examination, taking a good look at yourself. The fifth step, the principle behind that is self-disclosure. I guess colloquially you would say getting it off your chest. And one of the beauties of the fifth step is that it has an implied principle, and that is anybody that shares it with you is sworn to confidence. It's one of the subtle beauties of the fifth step. Self-disclosure. The sixth step is readiness. Get ready for this. The seventh step is humility. We have to ask God to remove our shortcomings. Because if you're anything like me, I don't care how much inventory you've done. If you have a real defective character, you're probably blind to it. And so you have to ask for help. And that's a very humble thing to do. And it makes me feel better. And sometimes I think it works. The 8th step is responsibility. You know, I got to take a look at all this stuff. I got to be responsible for what I stole, for whom I hurt, and so on and so on and so forth. Responsibility. When you're responsible, you start to grow up. The 9th step, wherein our promises are included, if you start doing this, the principle behind that is called restitution. And that's, you know, if you stole something, you put it back. It's really as simple as that. You'll feel better. The 10th step is continuity. This is ongoing. We continue. The 11th step, as I seek through prayer and meditation to improve my conscious contact with my higher power, I'm developing intimacy. And in the 12th step, as I give it away and share it with you, and we have all this fun together, I get to experience the principle of love. Thank you.
Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst and one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.